Hello Internet, my name's Ryan and this is Ryan Builds Wheels. Previously I have featured this wheel right here, which is a front 40mm deep carbon wheel with carbon spokes, hubs and rims from Extra Light over in Italy, and it weighs a mere 450 grams. Today I'm going to build the rear, as well as going through some of the finer points of what it actually takes to build wheels like this. So without further ado, let's pour a hot one, many faces of Judge Dredd, great mug, and get cracking. This set of wheels is for my customer Martin over in Penrith, but he's a highly ranked amateur doing a lot of racing in exceptionally hilly alpine terrain. He got in contact with me because he felt that outside of the rest of his bike, his own training regime and his fitness and the results he'd been getting so far, he only had one piece of the puzzle left. He sent me a video from Cade Media which highlighted one of the lightest disc bikes on the UK Hill Climbing Championship of late, and he wanted a copy of those wheels. We've changed things a little bit to suit him and his style of riding, and he was willing to go back and forth, and rather than just create a carbon, no pun intended, copy of those wheels, we changed a couple of little specs. So we've gone with a slightly deeper rim, for example. These are 40mm rims, 339s, from Extra Light over in Italy, who make fantastic parts, including the hubs for this build. The reason we went with a deeper rim rather than exceptionally shallow is because wheel weight isn't always as important as you might think. Very often what you want is you want to be gaining an aerodynamic advantage so you can hold that top speed. I mentioned that this front wheel ended up at 450 grams, and that's exceptionally light for a wheel set of this depth. Additionally, we didn't go with the lightest spokes possible throughout the entire wheel set. We wanted a little bit more power transfer at the rear, and so we ended up with a slightly thicker spoke out back. The 339 rim in question is pretty damn light for what it is. A mere 316 grams per rim, 315 on the front, 317. Trust me, I weighed them, and Extra Light also did me the courtesy of writing the rim weight on each rim. We've put the 2 gram lighter rim out front for, nimbler handling. Crazy light, it's excellent. One moment. They are a 21mm internal, tubeless ready hookless design. Hubs are the Cyberdisc SPD3. The spokes come from Imtofs over in China. We've opted for Sapium's excellent 70-75 double square nipples. We are going to be using Sapium's HM washers. The reason that I've spec'd those washers, despite the exceptionally small additional weight, is that these are wheels that are going to be used a lot, and Martin wants to be able to use them in mixed conditions and for training as well. One of the things you do need to be careful of with carbon, especially when using an alloy nipple, is galvanic corrosion. A quick shout out to Bill Mould. Bill's an excellent guy doing lots of educational content about wheels. I will link that either here or here, wherever it turns up on screen. I can never tell left from right when I'm staring at a camera, but you know. The reason we want those washers in between the nipple and the rim is because aluminium and carbon are very different on the galvanic scale, meaning that if they are allowed to make direct contact, especially with bare aluminium, although these are double hard anodized, then galvanic corrosion can start to set in, especially under salty conditions. The hubs, again, they are the SPD3 Cyber Rear from Extra Light, and they've been kind enough to upgrade Martin to their really very good hyper ceramic bearings free of charge. So thanks very much, Extra Light. I'm sure they're going to make Martin just that little bit faster, and they save a few grams at the hubs. If people come to me asking for super light wheels, and if the budget is there, then Extra Light are my go-to range of hubs for these kind of projects. They are, in my experience, much sturdier than a lot of other super light hubs out there. The machining is fantastic. I love the almost Giga-esque aesthetics that you get on certain areas of them. And the micro adjustment on both the front and the rear for bearing preload is another feature that I feel is very important. Other manufacturers, Tune over in Germany, for example, come with a whole range of lovely colours and also make great product. But one of the reasons I'm less keen on Tune's product, the somewhat finicky way of doing bearing preload, which involves a degree of trial and error in my experience, sometimes using a bunch of shims. Extra Light I find are really great for day-to-day riding under the right rider. And to give you an idea of just how light they're able to get, this rear hub weighs 139 grams. That's the same as a Bitex front centerlock hub. So pretty impressive. The other thing I really like about Extralight is that they include a whole bunch of useful tech documents for both the wheel builder and the owner, including stuff like lacing patterns, tension guidelines, and the rest of the instructions go through stuff like basic cleaning and disassembly from standard maintenance. So it feels like there's really good customer and trade support there, which I appreciate. Let's talk about the spokes. Spokes are, as I said, a carbon affair, exceptionally lightweight from IMTOS over in China. And carbon spokes are a product that have been getting better all the time and are getting a little bit more common on the market now. I'll do a deep dive into their pros, cons, etc. in the future. Today I really want to focus on techniques and what it feels like to build with them. But let's just take a quick weigh-in, because I all know you all want to know, and compare them to the gold standard for stainless steel spokes. FMC X-ray, 4.77 grams in this particular length. IMTOS carbon spoke, 2.06. That's half the weight. I've gone with the lightest of their two models and a slightly more bladed affair, thicker, chunkier at both ends in this particular case, is available. Again, because of the nature of the terrain that Martin's going to be riding, we've opted to go as light as possible. And the lightweight spokes are still relatively bladed. Aerodynamics gained from spokes versus rims. The rim's always going to make a much bigger difference. Worth noting as well that all of the ends, both the threaded end that threads onto your nipple and the fitment end for the hub, are in titanium for yet more weight savings. They're not cheap. They're going to retail at around £8 to £9 per spoke, and depending on the model you use, then of course it takes a little bit longer to build, especially if you've got to be taking them apart and putting them together again to fit them into the hub, so that would add some labour time, which is going to increase cost here and there. In the past, I have shied away from carbon spokes. They've had, not the best of rep in the past. Having seen their use by, for example, Z Wheels here in the UK, I'm much more happy to give them a go. Now, full disclosure, and Martin knows this, we discussed it in advance, this is the first ever set of carbon spoked wheels that I have built, and therefore it's been really fun for me as well. I've been doing this nearly a decade now, and to be able to push the boundaries like this, be able to have the trust of a customer like Martin is really quite an honour. So thanks, Martin. Let's build your second wheel and dive straight into it, shall we? Tools I'm going to require for this are pretty standard. Little nipple shuffler, a truing stand, tensionometer, BSC Tools nipple assembly device and square driver. The old trusty lubricants. Some way of holding the bladed spokes. An Extralight give you a tool especially for that. To make the job of lacing this wheel much simpler, I'm going to be using my trusty Noble Wheels lacing stand. Hub goes in the middle, a variety of different attachments, so as you can do QR, 15mm through, 12mm through, nutted stuff, etc. Great for hub motors. Each of these arms are adjustable, and on goes the rim. Easy peasy. I like to adjust it so I've got a little bit of tension on those rollers, each of which runs on a bearing, and the whole thing feels super smooth yet secure. The use of the lacing stand just makes lacing so much less fiddly, especially with straight pull hubs. My preferred way of doing this is to start with my key spoke, which is going to be the first spoke next to the valve, and just insert that to start getting a reference point. We've gone with a nice red valve highlight either side of the valve, just to show that these are a nice custom pair of wheels rather than being straight off the shelf. Worth noting that this is an asymmetric rim, so what that's going to do for us is allow us to have a much more even tension between drive side and non-drive side once the wheel is complete and dished. That means it's centered over the axle, and having spoke tensions as balanced and close as possible throughout the wheel for any given wheel geometry is one of the things that increases fatigue life massively and allows us to really push the boundaries with builds like this. So once I've got my first key spoke in to guide me throughout the rest of the build, I lace it just as normal, and I prefer to stick all of the spokes into each flange and then lace everything so as I'm not going back, forth, saves a little bit of production time. Let's time lapse that so you don't get bored watching me. You'll note that these spokes are not interlaced on this particular build. Doing so would place undue stress on the carbon spokes, and so we're letting them have as natural a path from the hub to the rim as possible. let's get it into the truing stand so that I can begin lubrication and initial tensioning. Boiled linseed oil is great for wheel building, and although there are several other products that I've used and we'll talk about in the future, always the case on this channel right now, you know, there's so many videos to make about wheel building, it's just unreal, and we'll go deep. Yeah, it dries hard, which is really nice, and therefore acts as a really good weatherproofer. I grab my drill and my driver. For this, I'm going to have to start using the little tool supplied by IMTOS so as I can hold the flattened area on each of the titanium threaded ends to stop the spoke from twisting as I begin to add tension. Okay, that's initial tension in. It's important with these kind of builds, you don't want to be adding tension too fast. I can creep up, so it's time to switch over to the hand tool. Now I can also take time to make sure all of the blades are in their correct alignment. One of the slight annoying things I have found about these spokes thus far is that although generally the area where you hold them is at 90 degrees to the blade, some of them when they've been assembled and bonded, that's not the case, and that was a little bit frustrating, so that is one improvement I'd like to see in the future. You want to avoid stress relieving carbon spokes, they don't like that. And now I can go around and check for any sort of loose spokes by hand. They sure do sing like spokes. Trying to get a feel for even tensions to start with means that I'm starting from a much better place. It's relatively straight already, great. Initial truing's done. That's certainly a fine place to start for tension balancing. Those dials may look like they're moving a lot, but actually what you're seeing either side of 0 is no more than 2 human hairs width right now. Not bad. Tension balancing can now begin. I did have to modify my spoke tension meter calibration gauge, just a couple little bits here and there to allow me to insert some of these spokes into the gauge and then bring it up to the tension that I'm expecting to give me the reading to expect. One issue I do have with these spokes is that tolerances for the dimensions of the spoke across their length and even from spoke to spoke isn't as tight as it could be. So in many ways I'm having to go kind of by feel and be very gentle, be a little bit conservative with how high I do bring those tensions, especially knowing that the rims have a maximum tension rating to them. So it's difficult to work with, but I'm getting a feel for it. I'm confident that they're going to ride very nicely indeed and they'll last a long time. It's a real gradual process. After each round of tension balancing, I need to go back in and sort of massage the wheel back into shape. It's very minute changes at times to get towards where we need to go. All right, and we are done. A lot of the work on this rear wheel did take place off camera. It's a very fine structure that needs lots of concentration and attention, and to make it as good as possible, I decided to carry out the rest of the work required in peace and quiet when I didn't have a camera staring at me in the face. Let's do the bit you've all been waiting for. How much does the rear wheel weigh? The front wheel weighs 450 grams. It's pretty light. 540 grams. 540? 990 grams for a pair of 700C 40mm deep aero carbon disc wheels. Pretty impressive. I'm excited by that figure because Martin and I did agree a target set weight, about 1,010 grams, and to come in at 990, you know, below what we'd actually expected is really quite pleasing. The other thing that I've really enjoyed working with Martin So, hello Martin, has been his open-mindedness in taking advice about what was needed from a wheel set for this kind of mission statement. We started out saying we wanted the lightest wheels possible. We took a look at exactly what he was planning on achieving. We went back and forth. We changed our mind about which rims were going to be most suitable. We decided to use thicker spokes at the back. And very often people can get really hyper-focused on wheel set weight, because it's such an easy marketing metric for the cycling industry to push upon their products and to make people think that that's what we're aiming for, when in fact so often what riders really need is an aerodynamic advantage and the ability to transfer power efficiently, especially in a performance setting like this. So that's been really great. And given it was my first time building on carbon spokes and the openness of discussion that we had around this build, it really did fill me with confidence working on such a special and expensive pair of wheels for a rider who's going to expect a lot out of them. I'm really looking forward to hearing from Martin about his experience riding those wheels. Only real-world conditions are going to be able to tell us how they truly perform, and I sincerely hope these wheels are going to allow him to push to the next level. The fact that he's riding competitively and is using them like that, as opposed to, just sort of cycling being the new golf and wanting an expensive pair of wheels to put on your show-off bike, means a lot to me. I really don't like building bling for the sake of it. If you feel that these are the sort of wheels that would be right for you, then I am going to give you a guide price now, because we know how much they weigh, but the other question is how much they cost. You're going to see prices in the range of about 2.9k. This combination really does seem to be the right one when you're trying to get wheels as light as possible. So until these wheels get shipped out and ridden, I don't have much more to say to you right now. I've really enjoyed building them. I hope to build more pairs like this in the future. And yeah, that's it. Do all the usual things. Like, subscribe, tell your friends, and remember, this is content that I do outside of my usual working hours to bring to you, the YouTube audience, for free of charge. I have got a Patreon. It's a mere £3.50 a month, and if you want to join up, you'll get a host of benefits, and you'll help more videos like this happen in the future. See you next time, wheel nerds! Oh no, Elvis has fallen over. He's there. He turns up in every video. You're meant to try spotting him, but I've given it away. You'll see him on camera later too.